So is there
All right.
anything off the table
Now we're good.
before we start?
Nah, I think we're good.
Okay, just checking.
Okay. I'm ready to go.
Okay, we are good. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Babylon Brews, deep thoughts from an overtime and text. I'm coming at you, Aaron Crude Juice for Verk, and I've got Gumby.
Hola.
We've got Dr. David Falk.
Hello.
How are you doing, good sir?
Doing excellent. How are you?
Very good. We loved what we had last time, and so we needed a second dose.
Awesome. And I'm here to give you a second dose.
There's a lot to catch up on, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, sure.
But to start out, we brought out a nice brew. This one's from Great Lakes. Make a splash, letting in some paradise and discover a golden oasis of tropical fruit notes. It's a hoppy hideaway you'll want to escape to again and again. It's an ABV of 6.0 and IBU of 60.
Mm.
This is Trapa Coastal from Great Lakes.
This can is awesome.
Right? The can's a little confusing because, to be honest, pretty sure I'm about to drink a fruit punch.
It's very
Well, it's colorful.
first sip, always out of the can. Always out of the can, Aaron.
Why break with tradition? Yeah,
It's really good.
I do like the can.
And I'm not a big IPA guy, but this has got body to it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's heady. I will say it's a little bit hazy going through it, though. It's got that nice light color, little yellowish. Nice head in the top, not too heady.
Mm-hmm.
I like hazy beers.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice flowery note, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and light, very tropical. It does have that tropical fragrance coming off of it.
Yeah, I like it because it's not overly hoppy. I can't drink overly hoppy beers.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
yeah, that's good. There's a little bit of fruitiness to it, some citrus.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of evens it out. That's nice.
Do you enjoy IPAs, Dr. Falk?
I do, but I don't drink many anymore. Basically, I'm managing diabetes. So for me, I'm off the beers and onto the whiskeys.
Whiskeys are good.
We do whiskeys.
We definitely do whiskeys. Pretty much almost all the bottles behind me right here are whiskey.
Awesome.
We'll do that with a cigar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Falk, we'd love to hear about things that have changed in your life since we've talked to you since last time, because you've been exploring new avenues, new ideas. You have a new person on your podcast now to answer certain questions.
Are you talking about the sock puppet?
I totally am.
Well, hardly new. You can see the sock puppet behind me by the picture, but he's also on our mug. And his name is Mr. Empty Conjecture. He was introduced in one of our popcorn reviews, where we did a review on Ancient Aliens, the Ark of the Covenant. And he's patterned after Gorgios Tsoukalos, which is the guy that shows up on the Ancient Aliens that has the fanned out hair. And he keeps saying, could be, and that's Mr. Empty Conjecture's byline, which is, he just says, could be. And he's kind of become a fan favorite on the channel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can relate to him.
Well, Ancient Aliens is all facts, so.
Of course, yeah. All fact. No empty conjectures there at all.
We're not saying it's aliens. It's just aliens.
It's just aliens, yeah.
That's awesome. I think last time we were ripping apart patterns of evidence pretty well.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there's still lots to rip on that. They're coming out, though, with a fourth one.
Really?
Yes. Yes, they are. On the location of Mount Sinai this time.
Okay.
Yeah. So we might be doing another review of that movie.
That sounds good.
Mm.
We're open because I think we only covered the first one and I think a little bit of the second one in the last
Yeah.
podcast. So there we go.
Yeah, there's now 4. There will be 4 of them. Part 3 was divided into 2 parts,
Okay.
and that was showcasing the Ron Wyatt's theory, which was now being espoused by Glenn Fritz, that the Israelites crossed the sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, instead of, they say, the traditional Reed Sea crossing,
Okay.
which is located in the traditional one's located in the northwest Sinai, whereas Ron Wyatt's version and Glenn Fritz's version is from the east coast of the Sinai across the Gulf of Aqaba and into Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And it's a really whack theory. Really whacked.
It sounds like it.
Could be.
It could be, yes.
Well, before we progress to other questions, we deeply regretted last time not getting to your ideas on, the Egyptian alcoholics. So
Oh, yes.
we'd love to hear
And they
more
were
about that.
they were splendid alcoholics. Well, they had several Egyptian beverages that were alcoholic. Okay.
Okay.
They had beer, and then they had several varieties of wine. Now, they had your typical Egyptian beer was malted barley that was brewed just like the beer of today. So it wasn't carbonated; it was drank flat, and it was typically, I'd say, fermented for about 3 days. It was generally a very, very low alcoholic beer. And it was really intended to be a method of water purification.
Oh wow.
So, what the Egyptians discovered very, very early on was that those who drank from the river were less healthy than those that drank from wells, and they were less healthy than those who drank beer.
Mm.
And what you had here is increasing levels of water purification.
Right. That makes sense.
It does, because when you heat up the grains to make beer, you are in effect purifying the water of parasites and bacteria.
I have heard that theory before.
It's the same reason why I say during the 19th century when Chicago had that cholera outbreak, they discovered the vector of it was in the tap water.
Mm.
And the way they discovered it was in the tap water was those who were drinking beer in the pubs, they weren't getting sick.
See?
Ultimately, they found out that the water lines and the sewage lines were connected.
I'm gonna go home.
That's
and
disgusting.
Tell my wife. Dr. Paul says
That's Chicago.
Healthiest drink around.
Healthiest drink around, yes.
Here's to help.
Right.
But typically, your Egyptian beer was only about 1 to 3% alcohol. It was very, very low in alcohol.
Okay.
Now, with that said, they could spike the beer.
Hmm.
And how they did this was they would add dates.
Oh, sugar. Yeah.
Sugar.
Yep.
It's equivalent to adding a sugar wash.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So they could get it at that point up to 5 or 6%. Now, the next step up from beer was wine. Egyptians never got drunk on beer because you'd have to drink so much of it that it really was it really wasn't a feasible way. When the Egyptians wanted to get smashed or hammered, they drank wine.
Okay.
Okay? And there were several grades of wine. You had your plunk, which was your date wine.
Okay.
Okay, that's kind of your plunk of wines in Egypt. It was pretty potent. It was pretty alcoholic, but it didn't taste that good.
Oh, really? Because dates are pretty tasty.
Well, it's like drinking a sugar wash.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
If you don't have anything in a sugar wash other than the sugar, yeah, it's potent, but it's kind of like drinking prison wine. It's just not there.
Egyptian hooch.
It's Egyptian hooch.
Okay, that makes sense.
The upper class who wanted to get drunk would drink wine from grapes.
Okay.
So they'd have vineyards, grow red grapes, and they basically make red wine. And that's what your typical Egyptian, say, elite would get hammered on.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay? And then there's actually a high-class wine above that, which was pomegranate wine.
Oh.
Very special, very expensive. You didn't just get drunk on this stuff. This was your highest echelon of beverage.
Okay.
Okay?
Pomegranates are delicious.
Oh yeah, pomegranates are yummo.
Oh yeah.
And the wine they make is very good. Okay?
Huh.
So they are excellent for making wine. It's just labor intensive, expensive, and difficult to produce.
Okay.
So
Okay.
only the rulers drink that. I assume.
Only the rulers drank that, or the high priests. Very, very rarely during certain festivals, like at the Festival of Heliopolis, they would give out samples to some of the worshippers to get them into temple.
Okay.
Because at Heliopolis, you had so many temples there that the cults were competing with each other. So one of the ways they sort of drew people in is to give them a taste of this exclusive wine.
I love it.
Yeah. So benefits
Yeah.
package.
Benefits package, yeah, sure.
It's so evangelical.
Now, they also did something else to their wine too, which was mixed it with lotus flowers or lotus juice.
Oh.
This gave the wine a psychotropic effect.
Really?
So it would cause hallucinations. You see these pictures of elites drinking from a wine vessel with a long straw, a long ceramic straw. At the end of that straw was kind of a filter to strain out the petals of the lotus plant. So they take the lotus flowers, just stuff them in this wine, have it seep, and they'd go on this magical hallucinogenic trip.
So the Egyptians were shrooming.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
Yes.
they did have access to certain narcotics.
Okay. So they
They
probably
also had access. They also had access to opium,
Oh.
which they imported from Cyprus.
Okay. So they probably did see gods.
Mm.
And ancient aliens.
And
They saw a lot of things.
Yeah. So, I got two kind of quick questions. One, is it safe to say that the Egyptians then invented beer? Did they invent our first, what we know today is beer? And two, was that based on what you said earlier because they needed to filter water?
Okay, they probably didn't invent beer because we have archaeological evidence that beer predates that by several thousand years.
Oh, wow.
Okay? They've been making beer as long as they've been cultivating barley, essentially.
Okay.
Okay.
And that goes easily back 10, 12,000 years. So we find evidence of brewing going back to ancient Mesopotamia, Turkey, and ancient Egypt. So they didn't invent beer,
Okay.
but they certainly loved their beer.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And you can actually go to the Giza Plateau near the Great Pyramid of Khufu and see these giant pits that were dug to make the fires to put in the cauldrons to make beer. Massive batches of beer. Because beer was also used as offerings to the deceased and to the gods.
Yeah, I heard that. Like, didn't certain pharaohs have like their own brew specific to them?
Well, the pharaohs generally drank wine.
Okay.
So we have wine dockets from various tombs in Kings Valley.
Hmm.
And every year that the king would build his tomb, he'd put in another vintage.
Fascinating.
This is one of the ways we can date how long these kings reigned. Because we can look at those dockets and see, say, year 5 of Horemheb, the year of the cow. Here's this batch of wine.
That makes dating very convenient.
It's very convenient, yes.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Right, that's good. Fascinating. Which even dispels more of the patterns stuff.
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah, fascinating.
Hmm.
Because you can't compress the chronology in the way, say, David Rohl suggests, because now you're having to deal with all this extra evidence, such as the wine dockets.
Yeah.
You can't telescope it in the way that he wants to suggest it.
Hmm.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, the more and more evidence you drum up, the harder it is to crunch those numbers.
Well, he has to resort to overlapping dynasties, too. And some of these dynasties were very powerful. Like, he has to overlap the 20th dynasty of Ramses III with Shoshenq I. Now, the two capitals are a stone's throw away from each other. The capital of, say, the 20th dynasty is at P. Ramses. The capital of the 21st dynasty is in Tanis. They're just down the river from each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
They're both building monuments at Karnak Temple upstream. They both have these administrative apparatuses. Huge administrations, both of them. Egypt was a country run by bureaucrats out of Memphis. Are the two administrations time-sharing office buildings at Memphis?
It could be.
Could be.
Yeah. Man.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But there's all this evidence. Such as the wine dockets, date labels. We find inscriptions on personal stelae. A huge apparatus of people who say they served ex-king at this time. It's just, there's a. It's just when it sounds okay if all you're doing is taking the chronology.
Right.
You can say, okay, maybe there's some plausibility here. But when you start comparing that chronology to associated biographies, administrators, viziers, each king had 2 viziers.
Right.
Yeah. Each of those viziers is supposed to be governing a region. He's the prime minister after the king. Well, how many prime ministers are running around this country?
Right. Fascinating. That's good.
Wow.
Yeah. That's cool. So, we'll get to the additional patterns of evidence films on our next one.
Sounds good.
Because we'll wait for the other one to drop, and then we'll just do like the 3 and 4 together, kind of like we did 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Because that's going to be fantastic. So I had those 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So one was, and I know you've done explanatories on this before, but a lot of people like to equate the different Egyptian gods to Jesus and show that they're just simply trying to retell Egyptian stories through Jesus and trying to show how the different Egyptian gods are just simply retellings, or Jesus is retellings of these gods. Can you dive into that thought process a little bit and dispel some of those?
Okay. Well, it all works out to this. I've heard people like Kara Cooney try to make a justification for this, and it boils down to that they're making these comparisons based upon vague generalities faulty comparisons, and parallelomania. Now, for those who don't know what parallelomania is this is when you take cosmetic similarities and try to establish an ontological, basically a one-to-one connection between them. The connection of causation.
Okay.
Okay? The fact is, like, for example, I was just listening to Kara Cooney today, and she was talking about how Christianity developed in Egypt after the death of the apostles. Okay? But you have to then say, okay, well, what aspect did religion in Jerusalem then play?
Right.
Okay? Are we really, I mean, did Christianity get its start in Alexandria, or did it get its start in Jerusalem? Okay?
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about with Christianity is an Israelite religion.
Right.
Now, the Old Testament has some influence with Egyptian religion. There's no question about that. We're not arguing that. Okay, there is connection. Like, for example, Psalm 104 is based upon the hymn of the Aten. There's no question about that. Nobody argues that. We do know a lot of the ritual practices that were used in the Old Testament. They got while the sons of Israel lived in Egypt. Saw how Egyptian priests did things, patterned it much after that. You know, for example, take the law where they don't eat pig.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's not a Semitic custom. That doesn't come from Canaan. The Canaanites all ate pig. It's a custom they got from Egypt. The Egyptians don't eat pig.
Okay.
So that's where they got that custom from. And when they went into the Sinai, God said, hey, you didn't eat pig before? Great, fantastic, continue doing that.
Very good.
Okay? So we do know that there is some Egyptian influence in Israelite religion. The rub here is that when we start comparing Jesus, who is sort of, there's a trajectory here of then Israelite religion that has its own imperatives, its own beliefs, and its own sort of rituals. And then you come to Jesus, and then you say, "Oh wait, hold it. He got it all from Osiris." Then we kind of got to go. Let's examine the details, because once you start looking into the details of these comparisons, they fall to bits. Like, for example, the famous one. Well, Osiris. He was raised by Nephthys and Isis. He wasn't raised on his own. Jesus. He wasn't raised on his own. He was raised by God the Father. So we have two gods raising this deceased God to become a god of the dead. See, it's the same. Absolutely the same.
Identical.
Identical. Except when you start looking at the details. Like, for example, in the case of say, the resurrection of Osiris, he's not raised in this life. He's raised in the heavenly realm. And the body he gets is in the heavenly realm, not the physical earthly realm. Jesus Christ is resurrected in the tomb. On this planet.
In the corporeal world.
In the corporeal world, the physical world.
That makes sense.
So stone rolls away and he walks out of the tomb. Hi, guys.
Yeah, that's a stark difference right there.
There's a stark difference right there. The second thing is, when you look at how Jesus was resurrected, the text is very, very clear who raised Jesus Christ. The Father raised Jesus Christ. The Holy Spirit raised Jesus Christ. Jesus raised Jesus Christ. And then it says God raised Jesus Christ. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. All three persons of the triune God, the Trinity, raised Jesus Christ.
That's
It was the Godhead that raised Jesus Christ. But if you selectively cherry pick your evidence from the New Testament, then you can make these cosmetic comparisons with Osiris.
Okay. Yeah, that's
And there are cosmetic similarities if you cherry pick.
Yeah, if you stay at the surface.
yeah. I mean, you could almost do the same thing if you used Superman, though,
Pretty much.
because Superman died and was resurrected, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah. But you can make all sorts of cosmetic similarities. That's the problem with cosmetic similarities, is the human mind is attuned to pick out patterns. This is why we call this in ancient Near Eastern studies parallelomania. You're drawing parallels that aren't causative, but they look so similar until you start scratching beneath the surface.
Yeah, that's good.
Why? Just to detract Christianity? Just to undermine it, or
Yeah,
just from a research standpoint, just to say, hey, look, they're similar, and everyone else did this. These cultures did this, and that's why they all did this. And Christianity is no different. Is that why?
Well, it is. It does boil down to that. Say, Christianity is not unique. It's to make it basically to. I mean, that's the problem with the faulty comparison. You make a faulty comparison with something else to elevate or denigrate another item,
Yeah.
another idea, and it's a well-known logical fallacy, but it is rife within this, say, mythicist worldview.
yeah. The new atheist.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because if you look at, and this is where I go back and forth, because I've actually known some very good, genuine atheists I could talk to. They're more agnostic, really. They're not truly atheist, because a true atheist is more religious than even we are.
Well, I mean, I've met atheists. I mean, frankly, before I went to seminary, most of my friends were atheists.
Mhm.
So I had very little contact with Christians outside of my local church back then. So
Yeah.
most of my coworkers, most of my friends, the people I went out and hung out with at the various clubs I attended to, they were all atheists.
Yeah,
Most of them just didn't care.
oftentimes.
Yeah, it wasn't that they were zealous atheists; they just didn't care.
Yeah,
And I got along with that kind of atheist just fine.
Yeah, I can relate.
yeah. I have a few friends that are more on. It's really an agnostic atheism.
Mhm.
They're not saying that there is no God. They just don't care if there is.
Yeah.
It's not part of their worldview.
It's not part of their worldview. It's not part of their concerns. Doesn't matter to them one bit.
Yeah. So in fact, many of them try to avoid the whole conversation because they don't
Mhm.
care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the angry atheist, and there's a whole new breed of those that are out right now.
Oh, I've had some run-ins with those. They don't like the work I'm doing.
Good. Keep going.
I must be doing something right.
That's a sure sign, man.
And it's funny because there's so many. They like to point out Christians' logical fallacies, but if you turn the mirror in, there's an equivalent amount, if not more so, of those logical fallacies.
Well, a lot of these new atheists were essentially once fundamentalists that deconverted. They deconstructed.
Yeah.
Now, you can take a fundamentalist out of their church, but you can't take their fundamentalist mindset out of them. So when they do deconvert, they're still fundamentalist in mindset.
Mm.
They just are now atheists that are behaving like fundamentalists.
Makes sense.
So, for example, when I do a lot of work on the Exodus, and when I talk to atheists, they're approaching this with essentially a fundamentalist view of the Exodus, not, say, a scholarly view of the Exodus, or even a text-based view of the Exodus, but the traditions that they were brought up with within the church.
That makes sense.
And so when they debate this in public, they will default to the fundamentalist understanding they had growing up as a Christian.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So my biggest challenge when I engage these people is say, okay, what does the text say? And try to get them back into the text to be able to have a meaningful dialogue.
Yeah. And then what's the corroborating supportive evidence for it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What is that normal default that they fall back into as a fundamentalist in regards to
Well-
something like the Exodus?
Well, for something like the Exodus, they will typically fall back to a early date of the Exodus, what I sometimes call Sunday school exegesis. Sunday school exegesis. We all, when we were raised, most of us when we were raised in the church, we were unfortunately subjected to really, really bad Sunday school materials, like from David C. Cook. This is probably the big example. You know, where you have, say, Jonah, and he's in the belly of the whale, and there's a table and chair and an oil lamp in there, and he's got all the comforts of home inside the belly of the whale.
Yeah.
Or Noah's Ark with the massive head of the giraffe sticking out of the ark, and it's the height of the hull of the ship itself. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think most people actually miss the whole point of the story of Jonah, because the reason why they compare Jesus, or Jesus compares himself to Jonah, is because if you read the text closely, he died.
Yeah.
And then came.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've done a video on this. I have done a video on, say, that Jonah was dead as a door knocker.
Right.
He was dead, totally dead, dead.
Wow.
Dead. Osiris kind of dead.
Yeah.
And you know, it's amazing how many Christians have sort of railed against that. Oh, he didn't die. Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah. It says he was in Sheol.
Jonah chapter 2. He's in Sheol. He's under the pillars of the deep.
Yeah.
That's the underworld.
Yeah, that part gets left out of the sermons that I've heard on show.
But that's what makes the sign of Jesus so apropos. That's what makes it so potent.
Absolutely.
Is that, you know, just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days, on the third day, he shall rise from the dead.
Yeah.
And it is that comparison.
Yeah.
You know, so when I hear, say, atheists say, well, how could Jonah find air to breathe? Wasn't a problem.
Right.
Not a problem. He was long beyond needing to breathe at that point. He had bigger concerns at that point than breathing.
He had the hands of the Rephaim bringing him down to greet him.
Yeah.
I personally think VeggieTales got Jonah right, but you know, I digress.
Oh, VeggieTales. Don't get me started.
Just cool as a cucumber.
But a lot of atheists are coming at this with Sunday school exegesis.
Yeah.
What they learned in Sunday school, the images they were fed, the exaggerations they were told, and they're just carrying that into adult life.
Yeah.
I see biblical scholars do this too, where their conception of what the Bible said is the same as the conception they had as a 5-year-old. It hasn't grown any.
Right.
Yes, they're now using, you know, scholarly tools like the documentary hypothesis, supplementary hypothesis, text criticism, all that stuff. But their fundamental understanding of the Bible remains the same.
That does make
And I think,
a ton of sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just sort of creates this problem. And it's a problem we've created ourselves.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You almost, and I'm not making excuses for anyone. I mean, everyone's own faith journey is their own. But a deconstructed atheist, if they were sitting under bad teachings in theology their whole life growing up, it's almost inevitable though.
Right.
If there's no real solid ground to stand on, when somebody comes and pulls and shakes your carpet, you're gonna fall.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Well, I mean, Aaron Raw put this really succinctly when he said that he doesn't have to be, I mean, he doesn't bother going after Christians who have a philosophical view or a nuanced view of Christianity. He says that's too much work. He goes after the young earth creationists because all he has to do is show the inadequacy of young earth creationism and they flip automatically to atheism.
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit, as it were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said anyone with a philosophical position in Christianity is very hard to assail.
Yeah.
It's too much work.
Well, I think that's why I really appreciate this type of platform, though, and the work that you do, because not everyone can be a biblical scholar, and like you or like Heiser or like all these great men that we know that do that. So, but to be able to find some middle ground and have something very concrete in their faith, I mean, we have to do something.
Yeah, I've got one more before we move on to any other questions. I've got one more thing on Jonah.
Okay.
So, the book of Jonah in the Jerusalem Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's a translation that goes back to I think it's 1930s. I think so. Has a very famous author that translated it. Does anybody know who that is?
Not off the top of my head.
C.S. Lewis.
Nope, but you're close.
Yeah.
It's J.R. Tolkien. Yeah, J.R.
Interesting.
Tolkien, yeah, being the immense, professor and scholar that he was, he's the one that translated from the original texts himself the whole book of Jonah in the Jerusalem Bible.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, just a fun fact.
Bet you not many Tolkien readers have read that.
Probably not. But it does read very smoothly.
Oh, sure it does. I mean, he was an incredible translator.
Yeah, it's funny because when they were doing the Jerusalem Bible and they saw his work in the book of Jonah, they said, "Well, could you just help with the editing of the rest of the book?" And he's like, "You can't afford me."
I like it. That's cool.
I have another question.
Hey, can I do one quick follow-up on
Yeah,
Osiris?
no, please. Yeah.
Did Osiris, in terms of comparing to Jesus, was there a claim to fame for salvation for people?
Not in the way that would say you would find in Jesus Christ. Okay. Now, the claim basically of soteriology in Christianity is you put your faith in Jesus Christ and his finished work of redemption, and you'll be saved. Okay? What the salvation of Osiris is that if your heart is light enough, it's a works-based salvation. But it's a works-based salvation mitigated by magic.
Okay.
So if your heart is too heavy, and it comes down to the scene 100 in the Book of the Dead, where you have the weighing of the heart. You have to see the famous scales there, and there's hearts on one end, and the feather of Ma'at, supposed to be lightness, is in the other half. And Anubis is there checking the scales, and then you got Amit, the monster who eats the heart if it should fail, if the heart's too heavy.
Okay.
And the whole purpose of the Book of the Dead is to protect and to lighten the heart So protects the dead through his voyage in the afterlife. Because it's a treacherous voyage. Moving through the sections of the Duat is really, really dangerous. There are demons and perils, and if you don't make it through each section in time, it closes on you forever.
Okay.
So you can really muck up your path to Osiris, to the judgment seat.
Wow.
So are demons in Egyptian lore similar to demons in Christian and Jewish lore?
No, they're
Okay.
different. Okay, think of demons in Egyptian lore more like the Council of Gods.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now there wasn't all demons in Egyptian lore are called Necharu. So every spirit from the highest god, Amun-Re, all the way down to some shadow in the corner of your grain bin is going to be called a Netcher, a god.
Okay.
So within that, there's this massive, say, continuity of from powerful to weak divine beings.
Okay.
Like the choirs of angels.
Yes, sort of, but more in line with say the divine council, where you not only have angels but every other kind of spirit being as well.
Okay.
So, like, you might have watchers and principalities and powers, and what we would call in the Greek daemonia, which are just more servants.
Okay.
So think of it more like that, which is a continuity of beings. Now, some are going to be for you, some are going to be against you, some aren't going to care.
Okay. And did they work specific? Like, did certain demons work for certain deities? Like,
Yes, some did.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. There's the goddess of healing, Sekhmet. She's a Leonine goddess. Okay, she is the goddess of healing. Now, before that sounds too good. She's the goddess of healing because she's the goddess that gave you your illness in the first place.
Caveat.
And she has 1,000 demons working for you to make you sick.
It might just be me. Is there a small investment you have to make to get better?
Oh, yes. Amenhotep III built a temple called the Temple of Mut. And within the Temple of Mut, he put in there 1,200 statues to Sekhmet.
Okay.
We can presume that he had probably long-standing chronic illness. Because he's giving all these statues to Sekhmet.
Okay.
To try to appease her. To take away his illness.
Some awfully rich priests.
But this is how deity worked in Egypt, is there wasn't a good deity or a bad deity.
Okay.
Deities were both.
Okay.
Gods in Egypt had a dualistic role. They had what the Egyptians called a good coming and a bad coming.
Okay.
And the purpose of sacrifice and offerings was to orient the good coming towards you and the bad coming away from you.
Okay. So it's a lot like the show Vikings then.
Haven't seen Vikings.
Oh, it's great. There's really no good guys. No, everybody's a good guy. Everybody's a bad guy. So very, very similar.
Probably then, yeah.
That is very fascinating. Setman, that's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good. That's a good question.
No. I mean, just how that can relate to some modern day things of you trust very people for the medicines that may in fact could be in fact getting you sick.
Except these gods know they're making you sick.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yeah. Very fascinating.
So,
like the god Happy, the river god Happy, He will basically, he's a god of fertility. He brings the fertility of the land. He also sends a flood that will destroy homes, pull up trees, send dead cattle down the river, sweep you away and drown you.
Good dude.
Good dude.
Man, don't take him off. So that's where the tsunamis come from.
He's a river god, though, so they didn't have an ocean god.
Okay. So my next question is: there's a lot of talk back and forth that we keep hearing, and a lot of this will play back into people that are trying to make Egypt far older than what it is, right? So the age of the Sphinx, because I keep hearing that it's two different ages. Is that true? Is that false? Is that...
Oh. I only have two hands. Oh.
Why did you make our guest unhappy, Aaron?
This is baloney.
Okay,
this is
figured.
baloney. All right. Now, the Sphinx is part of the Sphinx Temple complex that leads up directly to the pyramid of Khafre. And that's the second pyramid that was built on the Giza Plateau. You had the big pyramid of Khufu first, then Khafre, the second smaller pyramid, and then you had a third pyramid from Menkaure. Okay. The Sphinx is part of the Valley Temple complex of Khafre. And there was actually a port that went right up to the edge of it.
Oh, wow.
Now, there is some erosion on the Sphinx because the Sphinx is part of a natural embutment of limestone. Now, the whole Giza Plateau used to be, 2 million years ago, a floodplain.
Okay.
And this is what deposited the limestone there. So what you get at Giza in the natural limestone there is these sheets of limestone. A hard sheet, then a soft sheet, then a hard sheet, then a soft sheet, then a hard sheet. You know, in this sort of stacked strata layer. So they carved the Sphinx out of this natural embutment of limestone, more or less. Now, the Giza Plateau experiences a lot of wind erosion. A lot of wind erosion. So there is some erosion on the Sphinx, but it's not water erosion. It's wind erosion.
Okay.
And the soft layers of the limestone have, to be some extent, been eroded. Now, the counterpoint would have been to this criticism that, you know, this is just a natural erosion that took place after the Sphinx was carved during the reign of Khafre, is, well, you know, wind would never erode something like that. Okay? But right nearby the Sphinx is the mortuary temple of Menkaure, which was built after the Sphinx temple. We know this. This is no doubt about this. Okay? You go up to that smallest pyramid and you look at the temple there, the rocks look like they're Swiss cheese. I mean, like moon crater Swiss cheese. Like 4-foot holes eaten out of the side of the blocks. Massive. I mean, it looks like they're cratered.
Okay.
They don't look anything like shaped stones anymore.
Fascinating.
That's the power of wind erosion. Because the wind is picking up the sand, and that's acting like a sandblaster.
Sweet. That's
Limestone's soft. Limestone is soft. So it'll just carve out the softest bits. I got some wonderful photographs of that Temple of Menkaure, just showing what the erosion can do there.
Okay.
And the erosion at the Menkaure Temple is much, much worse than even on the Sphinx.
That's fascinating because that's you keep hearing that argument from different people, and they're like, "Oh, look at you could see that it was eroded by water. You can see the Sphinx is actually much older than it ever was. They're lying to you about the dating in Egypt."
No, we do have inscriptions around the Sphinx. There's plenty of inscriptions there to attribute it to Khafre. So, and we have to understand that these pyramids are not anonymous. They're not anonymous.
Okay.
They are surrounded by other tombs, and those tombs are from officials, viziers, say the queen's involved, the royal mother. You know, all these people, these dignitaries down to scribes, are burying themselves around the tombs.
Huh.
This is a national mortuary. This is a national cemetery. The elite of Egypt are creating their tombs around these pyramids, having themselves buried them with their biographies, because the gods have to know who they are to let the gods know how important these people really are. So you're going to get some guy saying, "Oh, I'm Menkaure, a vizier of Menkaure." You know, some of these guys were named after the kings themselves.
Okay.
You know, so you do get these situations where people are, they're naming their kids after these kings. They're being raised in the royal court. Their whole life is oriented around the king. So their death is also being oriented around the king. So you'll go into these tombs and you'll see the cartouches of the king in these officials' tombs. So even if the pyramid itself has no inscriptions at all, we can tell exactly who was buried in that pyramid by who's buried around that pyramid.
Okay. Fascinating.
It's a no-brainer. You go to Khufu's pyramid, who do you find buried around Khufu's pyramid? All Khufu's officials. His mother, Hatep Harris, was buried there. You know, his three of his queens were buried there. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who's buried in these pyramids.
Okay.
And likewise, in the case of Khafre's pyramid, we have his Sphinx temple, and it's got a Sphinx there. It's got the Sphinx, and it's got a temple there, and a paved causeway that goes all the way up to Khafre's pyramid.
Wow.
And that causeway would have been at one point been lined with sphinxes, smaller sphinxes.
Wow. That would have been a sight to see.
Mm-hmm. If you want to see something similar to that, you can see the Sphinx causeway at Karnak. That goes between Luxor Temple and Karnak Temple.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So all these people making these dates up, they're just in denial.
They're just in denial, yeah.
Okay.
They're not following the evidence. They're following a fantasy.
Okay.
Could be.
Awesome. That's really, really fascinating. Do you have any other questions on that side of it?
Mm-mm.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I have this. So there's a certain person that's been appearing on YouTube. That's why I had this other question. It's kind of a big one, but was Atlantis? Did those people progress out of Egypt to create? I'm sorry, come from Atlantis to create Egypt? And do you think that there is evidence that this location, the Rishon that they're talking about, do you think that there is evidence that that is where Atlantis is from, what Plato was talking about?
No.
Okay. And that's cool. I would love to hear the rebuttal to it.
Okay, well, what we're dealing here with is an absence of evidence. There is no evidence that connects. First of all, there's no evidence that was ever a city of any kind. Period. I mean, it's just looks like a natural formation to me.
Okay.
Okay. So there's no evidence that there was anybody ever living there, period. Second of all, we actually have a long prehistory of Egypt that goes back, say, at least 12,000 years.
Okay.
Okay. So you're dealing with both. You're dealing here with both several civilizations that preceded the first dynasty of Egypt. You had, say, the Nagata III civilization. And then before that, you had the Badarian civilization. And that's going to take you back to 5000 BC. Then you had Neolithic and Chalcolithic civilizations even before then. So you're talking tens of thousands of years prior to, say, even the first king of Egypt.
Okay. Well, that's a good argument. That's a good rebuttal.
So you're not buying Plato.
I'm not buying Plato. I mean, I like Plato. I mean, I did study some Platonic philosophy in college. But, he has no way of verifying this stuff.
Okay.
So one of the things that I have discovered being a historian is that ancient sources are often terrible for ancient history.
Oh.
So if it's a contemporary source, it's usually very, very good. But if they're talking about stuff that occurred thousands of years before, it's usually really, really bad. This is why I love, say, Josephus for when he talks about, say, the contemporary history of the Romans or the Greeks or the Judeans. Very accurate source for that.
Okay.
When Josephus starts talking about the Exodus, it's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It is so bad. So bad.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Because he doesn't have the sources.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I also, rail against people who use, say, the Talmud or the Mishnah for ancient history as well. Because it's the same problem. One of the, for example, people will sometimes use the Seder Olom Rabbah to try to calculate ancient history when it gets its history wrong in many respects. Like, for example, it calculates the Persian period to be about 50 years when it was more like 250 years.
Only a slight difference.
Yeah, slight difference. We're just quibbling now. Quibbling. Pillows.
Man. Okay, that's good. Yeah. The Talmud's fascinating anyhow because it's definitely let's say opinionated.
Well, you've got a mix of stuff in there.
Yeah.
You've got some history, but you also have legends, tales. It was meant to be a kitchen sink preservation of their culture. That's really what it is. It's a kitchen sink preservation.
Okay.
So, for example, the Ark of the Covenant. There are two competing tales of the Ark of the Covenant inside the Talmud.
Oh.
Of what happened to it. One of those tales is that it was buried under the Temple Mount, where it still exists today. The other one is it was melted down for gold scrap by Nebuchadnezzar. They both can't be right.
Right.
I know which one of those tales I choose.
Well, yeah. Well, we know it's obviously in a warehouse somewhere. So,
of course, yes.
Which is more likely? I mean, I would think it was melted down personally, but
well, that's the one I take. I personally thought it was melted down.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing with the Ark of the Covenant and any holy object, is it is perfectly the way you destroy holy objects is by fire.
Okay.
Because fire purifies.
Makes sense.
So that's the only way you can destroy holy objects is through fire, at least the canonical way.
Yeah.
We still do this. We still do this today.
Oh, we do.
How do you dispose of a flag?
What? Yeah. Fire.
Yeah, you roll it up and you burn it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Actually, in the Catholic tradition, we have our sacraments and our sacred objects, and you either have to burn it or
Mhm.
you have to properly bury it deeply. It's one or
Yeah.
the other. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So why won't Atlantis go away then? I don't understand the appeal. I really don't.
Why doesn't counterfeit currency go away?
Because you can still buy stuff if you get away with it, I guess.
Same reason.
Okay.
Why doesn't Atlantis go away? Because people can still buy stuff with it.
So it's, yeah, okay, all right, fair enough.
People can still sell books with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Disney, yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I'm glad I brought you on for that because there's a huge thing of, I would say, a small movement, huge rumor, small movement of these people moving forward and saying that the Rishad is obviously where Atlantis was, and they specifically say that that Egypt were the descendants of those people from Atlantis.
Well, people want to connect Egypt to everything.
Okay.
Because it is a high culture. It's a high culture that not a lot of people understand. Most people can't read the language, so it provides a opaque wall for people to try to sort of come to terms with it.
Okay.
Anytime you have an opaque subject, it is subject to these kinds of abuses.
Fascinating.
Oh, and Joe Rogan, I'm sure didn't help the cause.
Yeah, I'm sure he didn't either.
May have helped his cause, but not the cause.
Truth? What? Huh?
Ayahuasca.
Next, you'll want consistency and logic. How unreasonable.
That's fascinating. Yeah, there's a lot of different little splintered offshoots like those that pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And we've covered several of them tonight. But yeah, these different ones that shoot out and pop up. I think you covered some recently on your YouTube channel.
Oh, I cover all sorts of stuff on my YouTube channel. You'll have to be more specific.
What's the I think it was last week I saw a presentation, and I've watched a bunch of stuff since then, so I can't name what it was, but I remember it was really good. It was a dissection of something that was culturally in Egypt, and now I want to look it up and go over it. But we probably don't have time for that. So,
Okay.
What recent research have you been covering lately?
Oh, well, I have been trying, as I say, trying to get back to doing more content. We really want to focus on that's our goal for this year, is to create more content and basically stronger content.
Okay.
So we've been a lot of what we've been doing over the last year has been focusing on increasing our production values, how we do our editing, and we are at least trying to up our game. As far as, like, one of the things I do all the editing. Okay, I do all the editing. I do all the filming. I have no training in cinematography or video production. Okay, this has all been sort of amateur hour as far as the production values go.
Okay.
So one of the things we have been trying to do is, because we never, when we started this YouTube channel, we never expected it to take off. We planned for failure, not success.
Well, it's doing well.
It's doing very well for a channel that young. Yeah, it's caught us off guard, because as I said, we were planning that, okay, 100 people will sign up for this thing, they can get the benefits of the education. Egypt in the Bible. Who'd be interested in that? It's such a niche topic. No one will care.
Wrong.
So, we don't have to put a lot of effort in production values. Just get something out there.
Well, it's coming along really nicely, and it's I like to sit back and listen to it. Sometimes just while I'm driving.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have a lot of people who do that. We find that our demographics, kind of fit into sort of three sort of niches. We started off doing, say, as I said last time, the short content videos, which is 10 to 20 minutes, not to exceed 20 minutes. We discuss the topic, we outline the topic, discuss the topic, and get out. We don't fill in every detail.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we still do that for our Monday releases. And then we do the live streams. That was sort of the next evolution in this, is we then went to the live streams. And again, this is one of those things we had planned for failure, because we thought, well, people will run out of questions in about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then we won't have to do these live streams anymore. Yeah, they never ran out of questions. Well, we had originally planned it to be 1 hour. It was supposed to be 1 hour on a Friday night, few questions. We're going now for like 4, sometimes 5-hour marathon sessions, and I'm exhausted by the end of this, and I'm thinking, wait, weren't these people supposed to run out of questions like 2 years ago? It's like, so we do get people who will just like listen to those,
Okay.
when they're driving, because it's like 3-4 hours. So, we have that demographic who just like love listening to it. And we've, as a result too, we've also had people asking us to convert those into podcasts as well, which we have not done because we haven't found a suitable podcast vendor.
Okay.
I live in Canada, so podcasting's a little more complicated than in the United States.
Really?
I'm not. Well, there's a lot of the vendors, podcast vendors in Canada want you to pay money to podcast.
Ah. Okay.
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 Gotcha.
So that puts complications, especially if you're using long formats like we are.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
So you don't.
And then we got people who just view our shorts.
Okay.
We also take some of those old live streams and we convert them to shorts.
Hmm.
So the shorts are about a year behind the rest of it, but we convert those to shorts. We do 1 short or 3 shorts a week, and we have some viewers that just view the shorts. They don't view the mid-size, and they don't view the long content.
Interesting.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you're kind of hitting everyone. A little something.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the shorts are their new YouTube's TikTok.
Speaking
Both.
of one
Yeah.
of your shorts, speaking of one of them, there is one that you have. First of all, quick shout out and mentioning to Dr. Heiser, who recently
Yeah.
passed.
Yes.
R.I.P. Our respects and love to him
Yeah.
and his work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, just great work. But you posted something recently in his about Genesis 1, and
Yeah.
it's not supported for creation out of nothing.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I didn't.
Well, I was asked if I agreed with Michael Heiser that Genesis 1 does not directly support ex nihilo creation, essentially a creation out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see, say, young Earth creationists commonly say that Genesis 1 is a direct support of out of nothing creation. Well, that's not explicitly in the text. And even the meaning of the word bara doesn't actually explicitly state that. Like, for example, mankind is barad.
Okay.
But we know that mankind was not made out of nothing.
Right.
He was made out of the dirt of the earth.
Yeah.
He is a creation of pre-existing matter.
Mm.
So what we can't say from Genesis 1 is God is creating things ex nihilo. The text that's reading something into the text that's not in that text. Now it might be in other places in the Bible. Okay, but it's not in Genesis 1.
Right.
Okay, it's not in Genesis 1.
It does make sense because it says that his spirit was hovering over the water.
Over the face of the deep, yes.
Yeah.
Over the waters.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
But what we can say about Genesis 1 is it is definitely affirming creation by fiat, which is
okay.
God speaks it and it happens.
Okay.
So
That makes
it's not affirming creation ex nihilo, but it is confirming creation by fiat.
Okay.
With existing matter.
Yeah.
Yes, some maybe not, but it doesn't say. In some cases, it does say.
Okay.
You know, with the case of the creation of mankind, it does say. In the other cases, it doesn't.
Okay.
So we have to be careful not to read too much into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Read it in its context, read it for its intended readership,
Mm.
and exegete what is actually in the text. This is responsible biblical readership.
Yeah. No, that's excellent.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
Wow. That's not evangelical. I'm evangelical. I could throw my guys in the bus. It could be.
Could be.
Very good. So we're talking about different Egyptian mythos that are in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Which parts of the Bible do you think are the most influenced through Egyptian culture?
Well, Egypt had more influence on Israel than any other nation, bar none. Okay, it's the most influential culture to the Israelites of any society or any foreign nation.
Okay.
It's more influential than the Babylonians. It's more influential than the Persians. It's more influential than the Moabites, the Edomites, or the Ammonites, or even the Philistines. It's mentioned over 550 times in the Bible.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's more than twice as much as the next leading nation.
Fascinating.
And it all stems back to that seminal moment of God leading the people out of the land of Egypt. As you see this over and over and over again. Am I not the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of slavery, out of the bondage of servitude, with a strong hand and a mighty arm?
Very good.
It's all pointing back to the Exodus moment.
Mm.
Now, you also get other interactions with Egypt throughout the Bible, too. You have Abraham sojourning to Egypt and encountering the king of Egypt there. You have, say, Shoshank the First, basically invading the land of Israel during the divided monarchy.
Mm.
You have Taharka doing invasion of Israel. You have Hopre, who the kings of Israel try to ask to come and help them against the kings of Mesopotamia.
Okay.
You have Jesus fleeing to the land of Egypt to escape Herod.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always intrigued by that.
Egypt is interwoven into the biblical text. So there's going to be influence. Again, nobody denies this.
Yeah.
At least nobody should. It doesn't prevent them to, but yeah, it's interwoven in the text.
Okay.
But there is a difference between interaction, and say copying. There is a difference.
Yeah.
What text critics will call intertextuality. It's where you take the ideas of another culture and you engage them. Literature people say there's no text without intertextuality.
Okay.
I'm fond of saying it's like when you write a book. It's like when you write a book. In your book is disconnected from reality. It has no basis in reality. If you have one citation in your book, that's called plagiarism. If you have 500 sources in your book, that's masterful research.
Yeah.
The Bible is having intertextuality with many sources.
Okay.
Many sources. Egyptian sources, Canaanite sources, Mesopotamian sources, Zoroastrian sources, Hellenistic sources.
That makes a lot of sense.
The Apostle Paul is referencing Epimenides.
Yes. At the Areopagus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's you have the Old Testament, as I said, the psalmist, referencing, say, the hymn of the Aten. We got another section that's referencing the instruction of Anamote. There's all these different intertextual sources that go into the Bible. You have the Khnum myth. You have the Ray myth being referenced in Genesis 1, not directly, but through intertextuality. You have, say, even Mesopotamian sources like Enuma Elish, Enki and the Magic Hoe.
Ah.
These are other Mesopotamian sources. Gilgamesh is even... There's some intertextuality with Gilgamesh.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a copy, though.
Yeah,
they're not copying syntax or, say, diction. They don't have a copy of Gilgamesh right beside them and then copying that verbatim.
Yeah.
They're engaging the ideas presented by that.
Okay.
And they'll say, yeah, thumbs up to some, thumbs down to others.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's how intertextuality works.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that Nimrod might be a subtle reference to Gilgamesh.
We don't know exactly where Nimrod comes from. That's one of those things that's still highly debated and highly contested. And I haven't come down to any opinion on this because I haven't looked into the matter close enough.
Okay. Sweet.
There you go, Aaron.
Well, I like reading into things that are vague.
Well, I've often heard too, speaking about the influence of Egyptian culture on Christianity and, especially our modern day Christianity, but like even in our politics today, they say that a lot of our architecture in Washington has Egyptian influence and the way things were laid out, designed, and all of that. Is there any truth to that?
Well, the Washington Monument.
Mm-hmm.
It's based upon an obelisk.
Yeah.
But also, though, that Washington Monument is sort of basically extrapolated from what they saw as being the classics in Rome. Now, you go to Rome, there's several obelisks there. Many of, say, the American founding fathers were familiar with Italy and what was there. They're not going to Karnak and seeing basically obelisks lying on the ground, because by the time the American Revolution took place, almost all the obelisks in Egypt were lying on their sides.
Yeah.
Okay, they weren't standing up. They had all fallen down. The only standing obelisks were actually in Europe.
Okay.
Okay, so you had say Napoleon, the one that Napoleon took. Okay, and you had the ones in Italy. There's one obelisk from Egypt in the Vatican.
Okay.
So these were seen as basically being symbols of imperial power.
Mm.
Now, they didn't have that symbolism in Egypt. They didn't take on that significance until the Romans started importing them in from Egypt.
Okay. Interesting.
They were essentially totems to the sun god. Think of it this way: they kind of acted like a giant sundial.
Nice.
That's really what they were. They acted like giant sundials. Now they weren't telling time with them, but what they were doing was basically casting a huge shadow over a temple complex.
Okay. Makes sense, because there was it Aristarchus who figured out through shadows that the Earth was round initially.
Oh yeah, the Greeks already knew the Earth was round,
Yeah.
and even estimated its size within 10%.
Wow.
All by basic mathematics.
Yeah. Yeah. As I recall, I think it was Aristarchus was the first one, and then it piled in after that. I think after that it was Aristides after that.
Mhm.
And yeah.
And Pythagoras did not invent the Pythagorean theorem. It actually predates him by 900 years.
Really?
There's a tablet from Mesopotamia that has the Pythagorean theorem on it, and it dates to 900 years before Pythagoras.
Good Lord.
Whoops. Spoiler alert.
So plagiarist?
Hey, the Greeks had this philosophy. I say it, it's mine. This is how intellectual property worked back then.
Mm.
People didn't quote their sources.
Up for
Ouch.
grabs.
Hey, you say it, it's mine.
Yep.
Ouch. Yeah.
I mean, plagiarism is a modern concept.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. I mean, there are people who there was some like 10th century trials over copies. Like there was this big kerfuffle from a monastery where this monastery had this beautifully illuminated manuscript, and this monk from another monastery wanted a copy of it. So he went over, made the copy, and then went back to his monastery with the copy. Well, the first monastery protested because this was a cash grab for them. You know, people came to see this manuscript. If there's a copy over there, well, they might go over to that monastery instead. So they took it to the king, and it's the first copyright case. And the king basically said, well, just like a son belongs to the father, the manuscript belongs to the original. So the other monastery had to forfeit that manuscript.
That's
Oops.
interesting.
Yeah.
But that's like 10th century. That's like 10th century AD. So it's compared to ancient history, it's quite modern.
It's true. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, there's definitely some ground to be covered on those ideas. I mean, even the early Shakespeare plays played heavily on other people's material.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Yeah. And which is also might be why you don't hear it quoted a lot, because the early plays are like never used.
Well, it was hard to emulate the bard.
Like his later plays are all the ones that people know and memorize and use, but like his first several plays weren't stellar.
No, no, they weren't.
Yeah, but progressively got better and better.
Well, you find this even in, say, Hellenistic literature. Some of some of the early Greek comedies were hysterically funny. Guys like Aristophanes, just hysterically funny. I mean, really. Then you get to like the Latin comedians, and it's awful. Not funny. Guys like Plautus is just like, oh, this is a comedy? This is insufferable. I mean, Plautus even apologizes at the beginning of his play for not being as good as other playwrights, and this is like, how did this thing survive history?
That's pretty bad.
Right?
I can't imagine a comedian doing that today. Hey guys, you're not going to like my material, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Well, I mean, like, for example, Sappho of Lesbos, who was a Greek poet. Some of her work had survived history and made it to the modern times. But they also found on some of her lost poems when they did the papyri at Oxyrhynchus. Now, Oxyrhynchus is a big garbage dump in Egypt. But it's a garbage dump that also had a lot of mummified crocodiles.
Oh, wow.
And what they did was they would mummify crocodiles using scraps of papyrus, which is what's called cartonnage. So you're basically making a mummy out of this papyrus and paper mache. But researchers have been able to unwrap these crocodiles and have found lost texts. 2 million 2 million texts in these papyrus. Wow. This is how we have our knowledge of, say, Koine Greek today, is from that garbage dump of crocodile mummies.
Wow.
But we've also, among those papyri, have found lost poems of Sappho of Lesbos. And they're awful. The ones that survived were the good ones.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a lot of work to undo that and then realize, man, this is crap.
Right. It's kind of like hymns. It's like hymns.
Yeah.
What hymns do we remember? We remember the good ones.
It's true.
We remember Amazing Grace, How Great Thou Art, great hymns.
Yeah.
We're not so keen to remember Fountain of Blood.
Yeah. Wonder why.
Sounds like a horror movie.
Well, I was at a church where I heard this hymn, and it left an indelible impression upon me. I'll be sure of that.
Yeah.
It sounded so strange to modern ears.
Yeah.
So strange.
I can imagine.
I mean, I was thinking, are we playing Skyrim Oblivion or something like this? It's like Fountain of Blood. I mean, I know the metaphor they were driving at, but it's not. It didn't age well.
Couldn't we do this in a major key? That would at least lighten the mood, But then they don't have the same effect, I get it. Yeah.
But there were hundreds, thousands of hymns written in the past 500 years.
Yeah.
Most have not survived.
For good reason.
For good reason.
Well, it's kind of funny. It reminds me of that scene from Robin Hood Men in Tights, when he's like,
Classic.
"Well, maybe if you give me the bad news in a good way."
Oh, you want me to lie to you?
It's a great scene.
But this is what happened in history: is the best stuff survived. And this is the real reason why, say, for example, the Library of Alexandria didn't survive. It wasn't because it was burned down.
Oh.
Huh.
By the time the Library of Alexandria was burned down, all the collection had been moved to smaller libraries already.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because it had outgrown its space. So what they did was they broke up the collection to smaller libraries.
Okay. Huh. So it's not in the left paw of the Sphinx.
No, not with policy. Nothing's under the Sphinx. The idea that there's a tunnel under the Sphinx is ridiculous. V-Ray tried to excavate the Sphinx with dynamite.
Oh no.
Yeah, in the 19th century, this is one of those black areas, those periods of history we'd rather forget about. V-Ray thought, because he'd been told that there might be treasure under the Sphinx, he tried to excavate a temple with dynamite. This is why there's a big hole in the back of the head of the Sphinx.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Because he used dynamite to blow it out.
This is a story I've never heard.
And then he tried to dig a little tunnel on the top to try to dig down. That's why you find a little metal plate behind the neck of the Sphinx. There's a little 6-foot tunnel there
Oh.
that he tried to bore out, but it was just like, he was digging through limestone. No tunnel, just limestone, because it's a solid abutment.
Huh.
Solid rock going all the way through. No bricks.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, we can thank V-Ray for that.
You just ruined like half the movies out there.
Now there is a freaky tomb on the Giza Plateau.
Oh,
There's actually a couple of interesting tombs on the Giza Plateau, but there's one unlabeled tomb that's been sometimes called the Tomb of Osiris. It actually has a deep, deep shaft that goes down about 20 feet to a circular burial chamber at the bottom.
Oh.
Very interesting little tomb out there that was discovered about 3-4 years ago there.
Mm.
It's a huge necropolis, and it's not fully excavated.
Oh.
A lot of these necropolises aren't fully excavated.
Okay.
Just because there's not enough hands and not enough money to do it.
Well, yeah, that can't be cheap.
It's not cheap. It's cheaper to run an excavation in Egypt than, say, Israel, by a long shot, just because your money goes further.
Oh, okay.
It's very expensive to dig in Israel, which is why they have to charge people who want to dig thousands of dollars for the privilege of digging.
Huh. Ouch.
Egypt has laws that sort of prevent people from the outside from coming in. You have to provide, if you're going to dig in Egypt, you have to provide your workers, domestic and foreign, with meals and a place to stay.
Fascinating.
You don't have to do that in Israel.
You just got to pay the government.
Well, in Israel, you have to pay the dig. So if you want to dig in Israel, you pay the dig, several $1,000s to dig there, and then you pay for your own hotel, your own food.
Huh. Okay.
The permit process is also easier in Israel if you are coming in as a foreigner to dig. In Egypt, you have to arrange anybody who's foreign could come in on the dig years in advance. It has to be part of your application paperwork.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
So very few foreigners get the opportunity to dig in Egypt,
So,
just because it's so much paperwork involved.
Mm-hmm.
so is there any truth to opening a tomb and being cursed?
No. Here's the reason why. It's because tombs were semi-public.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they were semi-public. Like, for example, in Kings Valley, most of those tombs had a little chapel in front.
Oh.
It had a tiny chapel in front with a little pyramid stone on top. And you were if you wanted to go visit a king's tomb, you could do that. You could go there, and the antechamber was open to the public.
Really?
So you could go down to the tube, go into the antechamber, see the biography of the king or the person, read it, celebrate their life, leave your food offerings there for the dead, and then leave. You were not allowed to go into the burial chamber. That was private.
Okay.
So the burial chamber was private, the antechamber was public.
Fascinating.
Hmm.
It was meant for you to come in and leave offerings
Huh.
to feed the dead.
Yeah, that's not the story they told on the movie The Mummy.
No, it isn't.
I was thinking.
I would say that might be fiction. I've heard it said it might be fiction. I'm not sure about that, though.
based on a true story.
But there was definitely carnivorous scarabs, though, right?
I've never encountered one myself, but
The ones like human flesh.
yeah, I've never encountered one of those myself. But then again, I've never encountered a scorpion either.
Oh, okay.
I've never in Egypt. I have never encountered a scorpion or a snake.
Fortunate.
Wow.
That's very fortunate. I have encountered wild dogs though, and they freak me out
Okay.
because they hunt in packs and they're pretty bold
Mm.
Oh,
and they're wild.
okay.
Yeah, the dogs there are freaky.
Interesting.
I was doing a night photography out at Abu Simbel, which is the boundary temple of Ramses II. And I was doing some night photography. The skies at night there are just really clear. You see the Milky Way. You can get some awesome stellar photography done. And I was doing a photograph of the temple of Abu Simbel against the Milky Way background. Beautiful shot. Beautiful, beautiful shot. But I'm taking it, and there's hundreds of these wild dogs running around me in the middle of the night, fighting. Okay.
Hundreds, huh?
Hundreds. My wife is giving me a dirty look right now because this is the first time she's hearing this.
Well, yeah.
But that wasn't the freakiest thing that was there on that shoot. Was I kept hearing this chirp, 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 chirp. The crocodiles.
Oh,
The crocodiles were about 10 meters away.
really?
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh.
And they chirp.
And they chirp.
Are they trying to attract you to mimic a different sound, or?
I'm not sure what the purpose of the chirping is, but that's what it is. It's
Note to self.
Nasser has crocodiles in it.
Oh.
My lord.
And they can move inland, especially when they're young.
What could you
Huh.
do to protect yourself or anybody who lived over there in that situation?
Kick them hard.
Run? I mean, I can't imagine somebody trying to run a pack of dogs.
Well, you can't outrun the dogs.
Yeah. The alligator, you may have a chance.
The crocodiles, you have a chance because they're probably going to stay in the water, and you just don't get too close to the edge.
Right.
Yeah. Whew. So, how many digs do you have to worry about then when it comes to wild creatures?
It depends where the dig is. It really does. If it's in, as I said, if it's in, say up past the Aswan Dam, your biggest concerns are not going to be the wildlife, even though there's wild dogs, even though there's crocodiles. Your biggest concern is going to be, say, armed conflict coming over the border of Sudan.
Ah, okay.
Mm.
When I was doing my photographic tour, they had that road between Abu Simbel and Aswan. It was only open a few hours a day. because there wasn't a police escort that was necessary to keep that road open.
Oh.
Because at the time, Sudan was going through a very vicious civil war.
Hmm.
And there's still insurgents in Sudan. You're only about 20 minutes from the Sudan border there.
Okay.
You're really, really close to the Sudan border.
So
Now, Egypt has got military stationed up there, but should that overflow across the border, there isn't a lot they can do about it either.
Yeah.
okay.
So that's going to be your biggest problem if you have to go that far north, or that far south, sorry. Go that far south, that's going to be your biggest problem, is insurgents. Insurgents are also going to be a problem in the Sinai and in the Western Desert.
Okay.
We have Muslim Brotherhood and factions of Al-Qaeda.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to be your biggest problem in those areas. You will encounter some snakes in, say, the Nile Delta or in the Nile Valley. Again, dogs are going to be a problem. When you get down to the Delta, you might encounter, or more likely to encounter, like cobras, like the Egyptian cobra. That's not too bad. They're actually less toxic than, say, the asp, which can really make a mess of your day.
Okay.
Probably your biggest health concern in Egypt is drinking the water.
Yeah.
Don't drink the water.
That bad.
Don't go swimming.
Really?
Mm.
Is it,
Are they not making beer anymore?
Well, let me put it this way: as a tourist, you can get beer. As a tourist, you can get beer. As a tourist, you can get alcohol if you go to a specialty shop
okay.
or go to a bar. At a bar, you can get beer. To go get like hard alcohol, you actually have to go to one. There's one of two specialty shops that sell only to tourists.
Oh.
Okay.
And when I was in Egypt in 2019, I went to one of these specialty shops to get a really nasty bottle of Johnny Walker Red. Ugh. Yuck.
Yeah.
That was disgusting.
It is.
It's better than nothing, but boy, that was disgusting.
That's a big letdown if that's what you're drinking in Egypt. Yeah.
Yeah, that was nasty. But it wasn't cheap either. What
did it cost there?
It was about $60.
Oh my gosh.
Whew.
Yeah,
You paid 32 maybe here for it now. Today?
yeah. It was really overpriced. But again, it's a limited supply.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can only get, alcohol, hard alcohol, in a very, very few licensed places in Egypt.
Huh.
Beer you can get at, say, bars.
Okay.
You have to show your passport,
right now. Mm-hmm.
but you can get it. Get beer much more easily.
Okay.
They allow, say, Coptic people to drink beer.
Huh.
But everyone else is forbidden to drink beer because you are under Islamic law.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is an Islamic country. So alcohol is very, very tightly regulated.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it was in the Middle East that they created the screwdriver,
Mm-hmm.
the drink. Did you hear the story of that one?
No, I didn't hear that one.
So in the Middle East, they have a lot of oil over there and a lot of oil rigs. And so they would specifically import vodka because it's clear. So they put it in water containers, 1 gallon water containers, and they bring it in. and orange juice is everywhere there. So what they would do is they would take, vodka, orange juice, and then out of their tool belt, they would grab the screwdriver and stir it up. And that's how the screwdriver was created.
Interesting. Well, I'll say this about the oranges there. It's very tart.
Oh, really?
It's really tart. It's really difficult to drink because it's so acidic.
Wow.
It's very acidic.
I wonder what it is, that the climate maybe?
Yeah, probably the climate. But I've noticed that with orange juice across Egypt, it's very acidic.
Huh. That's interesting. So it needs the vodka.
Needs the vodka, yeah.
Good enough reason for me.
Hey, that works for me too. Yeah. Just hold the orange juice. I'll take the vodka.
Was there any drink in Egypt, that like, oh man, this was worth it. This made up for it, or
No.
no beer that you really liked, or
Well, the beer is pretty. The local beer there is not that much different than Coors Light.
Oh wow.
okay.
Okay, it's not. It's a. They're pilsners. They're pilsners. Not a lot of character to them. So I'm not a huge fan of Egyptian beers, at least the modern ones.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, does that hold true for like ancient Egyptian beer? Is that
Ancient Egyptian beer is a different animal altogether. It's a different animal altogether. It also is brewed under different processes as well. Different processes, different yeasts. You're going to get a really different product. The yeast that they're going to use, the ancient Egyptians are going to use, is more akin to sourdough yeast
Oh.
than it is to, say, modern brewing yeast that you would find in, say, a pilsner or even a ale sort of brewing. So it's more akin to bread yeast than it is to, say, modern strains.
Okay.
Whereas modern Egyptian beers are basically using normal brewing yeasts.
I hear opportunity.
I think there is one brewery who's trying to recreate this on a commercial scale.
really?
I don't know the name of the beer though.
Okay. That would be cool.
It's here in America. It's not over in Egypt.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll have to look for it.
yeah.
Yeah. Because some of the most interesting beers are the ones they created on those little offshoots.
Yeah.
Even Trappist breweries are very unique, the way that they create their beers to get that very unique flavors to them.
Well, we also have to keep in mind too that what made ancient beer more distinct too is a lot of the contamination in the brewing process. So a lot of flies in Egypt. And flies carry acetobacter.
Oh, okay.
Okay. This is what takes alcohol and turns it into vinegar.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So because flies are so common in Egypt, most of the ancient beer is going to have a kind of a tart, lemony, vinegary taste.
Huh.
Because it is so heavily contaminated.
You just spoiled it all for me.
It's actually not bad.
It's not all my preconceived notions of it.
Well, it is going to give as I said, the beer kind of a lemony flavor, the tartness.
Okay.
That you wouldn't normally have in beer.
It's like a craft brew.
Yeah, kind of a craft brew.
Yeah, we've had some.
Think of it, it'll have citrus notes.
That's right.
But not citrus notes from the hops, citrus notes from the acetobacter.
Yummy. That's kind of like when they make aged beef, right? And they just grow bacteria on it so that it eats some of the beef away.
Yeah.
So it's tender aged beef.
Yeah. But these are industrial. These are food processes that are thousands of years old.
Jeez.
Nobody died from them. Think about what went into cheese. Come on.
True story. My wife and I go back and forth on that because she's a huge cheese lover, and I'm like, well, which kind of bacteria do you need today? Because all those little bacteria, there's a reason why certain cheeses taste like foot fungus, because it's the same bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
Candida. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Lactobacter candida.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I used to do some cheese making too.
Nice.
Yeah, so
now you're a whiskey guy, right?
I'm a whiskey guy.
You make your own?
Should I answer that question?
I won't get you. Okay, so
Let me put it this way: Let me put it this way: I am able to make my own
Okay.
because I learned how to make my own when I lived in England.
Okay. Yeah.
Very cool.
So I know the whole process,
Gotcha.
and I used to experiment widely with it.
Nice.
It's safe to say that you get pretty high standards when you drink whiskey. Then.
Yes, my standards are pretty high. I can tell the difference between a copper pot distilled whiskey and a refractory distilled whiskey.
Mm.
It tastes really different.
Okay. Very good. I was actually up there in Calgary last year. It was stop at a nice little whiskey bar there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it's you can get some real great variety in whiskey, especially now. There's all sorts of different producers, and you're going to get regional differences and even manufacturing differences.
Mm-hmm.
And each, I think, has its own particular character, its own approachability, its own challenges, flavor profiles.
Yeah.
You get a Bushmills that, has, say, hints of banana flavor in it versus, say, a Lefroy, which has a very peaty taste.
Yes. Yeah. I like Lefroy.
Yeah, I do too. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. The peat, I think, is what gives that character. It's a little bit heavier too, because as you swish it, you can actually see a little bit of the oily structure inside of it.
Oh yeah, especially if you add a drop of water to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you really see the oil on that. The whole peating process is very interesting all by itself, and there's actually multiple ways you can peat a whiskey. The traditional method is to essentially mulch your grain and then put it in a smokehouse with a brick of burning peat. But that's not the only way to do it.
Okay.
You can actually do it by using essentially put a basket of burning peat inside your stripping run.
Nice.
You can do it that way too. And if you do it that way, you do your stripping run and then you do your spirit run, and it comes out just about balanced right.
Okay. Awesome.
So there's more than one ways you can peat a whiskey.
Yeah. That peat was cut out of those bogs.
Oh yeah, it's peat bog. It's sphagnum peat. Yeah, it's the same stuff. And there's also going to probably be some regional differences in peat as well. Because sphagnum moss is not the same everywhere.
Okay.
There's 50 species of sphagnum moss distributed all differently all over the world. Scottish peat is going to be very different than, say, Vancouver peat, which is going to be different than New Zealand peat.
Okay. Fascinating. That is good stuff.
That is good. We're going to have whiskey next time.
Absolutely.
Well, next time I promise I'll drink whiskey with you guys.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we got to find a way that we can all drink the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
hey, send me a bottle, then we got it solved.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can do that. What's your current running favorites?
Oh, as I said, Lefroy is one of my ones. I want to try some of the other Ela whiskeys too.
Okay.
So I'm eager to try some more, but I'm also right now on a how do I say it? I'm on a church mouse budget.
Okay.
So I can't really experiment widely. I like McClellan. I think McClellan's very good.
Okay.
Glenfiddich.
Yeah.
19 years.
Okay.
Not the 21.
Okay.
The 19 is better than the 21.
Okay.
Good to know.
One of the things I really liked, I've tried the Glenfiddich 5, 12, 19, and 21.
Okay.
The 5 was okay. The 12 is better. The 19 is a very complex whiskey with multiple layers. Okay. Anytime I get a drink with multiple layers of flavor, oh, I'm in my glory at that point.
Yeah.
The 21 has been aged just 2 years too long and has actually lost its notes.
Okay.
Okay. So even though you're going to pay $250 a bottle more for the 21 year than versus the 19, it's not worth it. You're getting less.
Keep that in mind.
Also,
Glenfiddich 19.
Glenfiddich 19. Like, for example, as I say, one of the things I love in drinks is complexity. This is why I love drinking, when I could still do this, vermouth rosso, basically red vermouth.
Yeah.
The way the Europeans do it,
Okay.
which is refrigerated straight up, not as a mixer.
Really?
Most North Americans have never thought to drink sweet red vermouth as a cocktail, as a drink on its own.
No.
Try it.
Okay.
You'll get layers of sweetness, of raisin, of orange, and it'll have even a nice pleasant aftertaste to it. It's a very complex alcohol. Very complex.
Sweating my whistle already.
Hey, and we didn't even get to the various ways you could oak a whiskey. You know, there's that's one of the things I learned when I was doing whiskey was you can change the flavor profile of whiskey by changing the wood.
Very, very nice.
Because one of the things is you're gonna go if you go buy a bottle of whiskey from the store, okay, and you can actually do this at home if it's legal in your state. Okay, and I'll qualify that. As you go to the liquor store, you buy yourself some moonshine, alcohol, vodka in a pinch. If you can't get moonshine, get vodka.
Okay.
Okay. Get a glass jar. Put your vodka or your moonshine into that glass jar. And then take a strip of toasted wood. You know, toast it in your oven at 350 degrees for about an hour.
Okay.
Okay. And you can get wood chips at like Home Depot. They use them for barbecuing. And then put that in there and watch it start to color your alcohol. You're making whiskey.
Okay.
Okay, at that point, you're transforming that white whiskey, moonshine, vodka into a different drink. And you can change the flavor profile of that by changing the wood. And you can even change it by how it's toasted. Bump that up from, say, 350 to 430, and you're going to get a different flavor profile again. But I've tried stuff like, of course, the classic white oak. But that's not my favorite. Not even close. I put like mesquite, cherrywood, applewood. Each of those was going to give you a very different flavor. The mesquite was very interesting. Very interesting. You have to be careful with the mesquite not to over oak it.
Okay.
But you can get something that tastes like a well-aged whiskey in a couple of weeks.
Oh.
Because it's such a strong flavorant.
Interesting. These are things I'm going to have to try now.
I know.
But the cherrywood's really nice.
Okay.
But I've done this with whiskey. I've done this with brandy. I've even done what was the other liqueur? I've done it with rum. You know, brewed and distilled my own rum when I was in England. You know, you can do this with a variety of different alcohols.
Sweet. All right. Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Maybe next time we'll do that Glenfiddich.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. Tell you what, for our next, when we reconnoiter with you,
okay,
you let us know about one of your favorite top 5, and I'm going to look for a local vendor for you so we can get you a bottle.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Look forward to that next one.
Sounds excellent.
Under $1,000.
Right. Well, this has been a fun time. Another great podcast with you. Thank you.
Well, Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, thank you again for coming on. It's always vastly informative. You're readily able to answer all of our questions. So it's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I have a great time when I come on here. This is a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy your podcast because it's just like, I love the mix. I love the mix of beer and Bible. You know, that's two of my favorite things. How can I not like it?
Right?
We feel the same way, man.
Right. Yeah. We try to make it like a friendly environment, like you're sitting at a tavern with a friend.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, thank you again. Do you have any final questions or?
No, I appreciate you being on. Appreciate your work. Thank you. Looking forward to ripping apart part 3 and part 4 of patterns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over some Glenfiddich next time.
What
Sounds fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks again for coming on. Look
My
forward
pleasure.
to having you on again.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Doctor.
Have a great night.